a girl from UAS Raichur, Agriculture University Raichur, on a rainy Tuesday night. She was traveling towards the Sergera Road, that is towards the Raichur University, and she was found unconscious at an isolated place near our campus entrance. There are no eyewitnesses. There is just one CCTV camera. There is one footage which shows the timing of 9:40 to 9:47, that there was a girl moving and she has been fallen unconscious. And what the CCTV shows has raised the question. Now, having seen this image, what comes to your mind? Any guesses, any idea, anything? And I always expect from my students, I need not get the right answers. I need the wrong answers. Because the moment you answer right, I am useless here. That is what the point is. And that is what you are going to teach to your students also. If your students answers right every time, we are absolutely useless. Yes, ma'am. Why she fainted? Okay, absolutely. Then anything else? The questions coming to your mind? She's not fainted, she's unconscious. Let us go by the word, unconscious.
The reason they were unconscious.
Why she must have got unconscious at that moment of time? And obviously, being an agriculture student, that to a PhD scholar, why has she come to Yergera Road, that to near university, Raichur University? That to at a late night, that to it was a rainy Tuesday night. Very good, very nice. So let us say at 9:30 p.m., the girl is seen walking towards Yergera Road. 9:33, she's still there, and at 9:47 p.m., she is found unconscious. Technically, let us assume she was found dead. At 9:47 p.m., she was found dead. So before I begin, let me take you to a little past. And here, I don't want you to just listen to me. You need to do a little bit of writing work for me. Done? Possible? Okay. So it goes like a Netflix web series now. Okay. So we are going to connect this entire into a web series kind. So I will be dictating few things. You need to take down what you feel is important for you. Done? Ready? Okay. The girl who was found near the Raichur University, her name is Ananya Rao. She is the student president of UAS Raichur, who had just begun her day just like a normal student day. She is 28, a PhD scholar, and one of those students who seem to belong to entire university rather than to one department. Juniors called her Akka. Seniors knew her from student activities. Research scholars often came to her with problems. She had a reputation for being friendly, but she was also known for something else. If a student came to her with a problem, she would ask enough questions to understand what had actually happened before taking her side. The morning she arrived on the campus, a little after 8 o'clock, at the entrance she met a guy named Manoj. He is a second-year student who had been trying to meet her for several days. And when he meets her, he greets her and he says, Akka, you forgot about me. For which Ananya replies, I did not forget you. You are just very difficult to find. And then there is a normal conversation between them. A little later, she meets her closest friend of PhD. Her name is Meera Kulkarni, another PhD scholar. They had known each other for years and they were comfortable enough to disagree without being formal. And Meera says to Ananya that you look today very tired. You didn't sleep much or what? For which Ananya says, no, nothing serious. I had a very ordinary day. So they just walk by. And the morning passed with the ordinary university work. Ananya attended a student meeting. She spoke to a few students who dealt with 2 minor complaints. Nothing happened that would make anyone think that this day would later be examined minute by minute. About 1 o'clock, she went for a lunch with a group of friends. There were 7 people at the table. Names: Meera, Manoj, Kavya, Nikhil, Deshmukh, Aditya, and Farhan. Remember the names: Meera, Manoj, Kavya, Nikhil, Deshmukh, Aditya, and Farhan. Aditya is known to be her boyfriend in the college. So the conversation was completely ordinary, just like how friends meet. They joked about campus life, they argued about some issues, etc. Then suddenly Aditya sees her with an odd look. During the conversation, Aditya walks off. Ananya gets a call. And the moment she sees the call, she becomes a little tensed and she little nervous. She takes a minute from the friend group. She goes, she picks the call. And when she comes by, she looks a little tensed. After some time, Aditya also comes back and joins the conversation. Then again, the normal day happens. Ananya goes for a walk. Evening, she meets another friends for tea, so on and so forth. And in the evening, whenever she'll be going back to the home, she says to her friends that she's going back to her home at 5. She leaves the campus at 6:30 p.m. And later, she is being found near the Raichur University Ergera Road at around 9:30, 9:45. And later, she is found unconscious. The first person who saw her was a security guard of Raichur University. He immediately runs, seeing a girl unconscious. Her bag was fallen. Her cell phone was fallen. He immediately calls the police. The police immediately comes and they start to investigate and they just claim that this could be a murder. This could be a murder. Now, can I call it directly as a murder without investigating it? What do you think? At the first instance, difficult, right? So you remember this past? You should remember this story, okay? Because at the end of the day, you need to find out who is the killer after I complete my session. Done? This is the task to you guys. So now, coming back to this story, she is found unconscious at around 9:47. Security guard has come. She has informed the police. What information would you like to know after this? After this incident has come to you, or you have got to the notice, what information would you want to know? You can ask me. Like ma'am said, what was she doing here at night? That too when it was raining, she being from UAS Raichur. Yeah. Somebody from this side? Anything?
She at 6:30.
She has left at 6:30.
But she found at 9:45 as an unconscious.
Absolutely.
The gap between this
That 3 hours is very, very critical. Absolutely correct. We have to check the CCTV camera footage. We want the CCTV camera footage. So definitely you would like to ask one of these questions. You would want evidence to know how was she unconscious, whether she was murdered or not. Would you start asking the questions? Would you start looking for some other patterns? When she came, when she left, those timings, those CCTVs? Would you start comparing the pieces of information that I am going to provide you? Would you start testing the explanations from her friends when you are going to investigate? So this leads to us for the topic, the research questions. So whenever we formulate an idea or when we come up with a problem, we need to first frame the research question. That is the first basic fundamental of a research, the research question. Coming back to the same incident, let me say, the 4 information that I have provided in this table, you should tell me what do you know from the story and the past that I have told you, and what are we assuming. The first question, the student was found at 9:47. Do we know this or should we assume this? Definitely, we know this. She was murdered. Do we know this? Should we assume this? We have to assume this. She was alone. Do we know this or we assume? Assume or we know?
We know that she with his friends or our friends.
No, you said no, she came alone.
Now there's a conflict. Let us now go back once again. Think once again and tell me whether it is known or assumed from the past story and from the photograph. No or assume?
Assume.
Absolutely. Assume. Perfect. A round of applause for the young girl. She walked towards Ergera Road at 9:43 p.m. Do we know this or should we assume this? Do we know this or should we assume this?
Assume.
What do you think? No, we do not know. But the line says she walked towards Ergera Road, and I'm specifying the time 9:43 p.m. Known or assumed? We know it because CCTV was there and CCTV recorded it. So we know it. Someone attacked her. Do we know it or should we assume it? So usually we know anything that happens around the university, inside the university, stories cook first. Real things comes out later, isn't it? This is where research begins. And technically to tell you, when you started to differentiate between known and assume, you started to frame the research questions. Isn't it interesting? And that too, without intention, you have started to frame the research question. So for a PhD grad, when it comes to a research, it is very important to distinguish between a question. What do we want to know? Next, observations. What we actually see. And third, assumption. What do we think is actually happening? And then evidence. What can we substantiate? And this distinction becomes the heart of a very good research. Now, if I say this, who killed her? Is it a good question, research question? Why not? My statement, my research question based on the incident is, who killed her? Is my research question.
Sir, the primary question is whether she is killed or not.
Not,
Without
absolutely.
knowing that, we can't arise that question, who killed her?
Okay, absolutely correct. So what sir has also told me, I have started to assume and declare by myself that she has been killed. I really do not know the fact. So telling this as a really a good question for the research, not the right idea. So what would be the really a good question for research or the research question here from this incident? Any guesses or any attempt? What do you think is the research question from this case perspective?
We have to observe, sir, what happened between 6:40 to 9:47.
Okay, that means we have to now frame the patterns, correct? Then anything? Why she died? The reason for the death. Okay, very good. Anything? Anything better? From an investigation, perhaps this. Yeah.
Police.
Police. Okay, how police? Yeah, good. Take a try. Take a try.
The police attack.
Huh.
The security called police.
Oh. Yeah, that's also a good possibility. Yes, correct. Absolutely correct. So from the investigation perspective, perhaps this would be a very good question. But from the research perspective, it is too narrow and it is based on complete assumption that a murder has already occurred. And the police usually does the same thing to keep it at a safe side, that they declare this could be an accident or it could be a murder. Investigation happens later. But from a research perspective, if I want to phrase the correct or a good research question, the question should I ask is, what evidence can establish the situation leading to the student's injury? I do not know whether she was unconscious. I do not know whether she was murdered or was there any misconduct with her. So this is very particular question for that incident. But if I want to establish a larger pattern, let us say some incidents must have happened earlier also on this road, then my question will sound like, are there recurring characteristics associated with serious incidents involving students in and around the university? So now, very narrower research questions to identify a larger pattern, the question changes. So here the knack is, when you want to solve a problem or want to raise a research gap, it is important for you to frame a very good research question. And not everyone can have a very good research question, or not every topic can have a very good research question. And it is not important that we need to solve every problem on this earth. Important is, based on the funds available, based on the time available, and based on the need of that topic, we need to decide our research question. So importantly, you should have a good research problem, the clarity, specific, it should be researchable, it should be feasible, and finally, it should be relevant. To give you an example, in my PhD, when I started working on agroforestry land use dynamics, I told my guide, sir, I want to check how the land cover has changed in Uttar Kannada district for a span of 25 to 30 years. He says, you have been too ambitious. Slow down and reduce and narrow your topic. I was still a little skeptic about this work because I felt that is a novel work and I can solve this. And what I had to do was just remote sensing, compare two images of today's as well as 20 years behind. Compare, check, game's over. My research work is done. But then I realized, what am I getting after comparing the two images? This land has changed to this. That's it. Reason, not more. So then I had to frame another question. If the land has changed over a period of 20 years, what caused it to change? Then the answer came after analysis that the farmers are now changing their cropping pattern, the land use pattern, families getting divided, needs are increasing. So second objective was also over. But then why farmer is taking such decisions? That again became a question. So again, for that again I framed the research question. Again I worked upon it. And when I started to put up research questions and put up some more work, my guide called me and he told, you are going to do Panchavarshika Yojane. Idu 3 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಗಿಯಲ್ಲ, ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆದರೆ 8 ವರ್ಷ ಮಟನೂ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು, ನಿನ್ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ, ನೀನ್ ಏನಾದರೂ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗು, ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಬರಬೇಡ. And at one point of time he raised his hand. And luckily that time was the COVID time. COVID had just begun. And I thought it is a wonderful opportunity for me because I will buy another 1 or 2 years. I got that free. And being from the government university, we get an extra opportunity that we can go anywhere even during the lockdown also. So I roamed in the lockdown everywhere to check for meeting the farmers, etc. And about 3.5 years, I completed this work. And to tell you, by right framing the question and the objectives, my thesis is today used by the Uttar Kannada District Commissioner for Disaster Management Plan. So that became one such big opportunity for me. And I got recognition from the governor of Karnataka. He gave me a gold medal and an extra prestigious certificate, because of which I could jump from UAS Dharwad to Delhi. And that gave me an extra edge for my own career. So for the incident, the main question should be now, what happened to the student on the night of the incident? That becomes our main question. Then, when we know the main question, we need to divide that main question into subtopics, because we need to have 3 to 4 objectives in our own research also. First question, what happened? When did it happen? Where did it happen? Who was present? What evidence support each possible expedition? Are there any patterns linking this incident to previous incident? So a research question asks what you want to know, but a research objective states what will you do to find it out. So this is where I'm linking the gap between the research question to the research objective. Able to understand? You are able to connect now? So framing the research question is most important. And from the research questions, we are now going to frame our objectives. So now, having known or said these research questions, what do you think should be the objective of investigating this? If I tell you that you are the investigating officer, tell me any 2 to 3 objectives for investigating this work. You have the writing work right now. You should tell me at least 2 to 3 objectives based on these research questions. What do you think should be your first objective? I'll raise the bar. I'm giving you 10 lakhs and 6 months for investigating this work from the government. Okay, so fund facility is there, period is given. Now use that money, investigate this case. How are you going to start this work? What will be your first objective, second objective, third objective? Ma'am, usually how many objectives are given here for a PhD? How many?
It depends on problem.
Like generally, on an average? 3? 5 to 6. ನಿಮ್ದು ಪಂಚವಾರ್ಷಿಕ ಯೋಜನೆ ಇದೆ. Okay. So ideal I say ki if the work is very intense, it should be 3. And if the work is slightly easier and satisfies your head of the department, it can go up to 5. Beyond 5, it is Panchvarshika Yojana only. Okay. So now, again, you need to now put a little work to your brain. Research question, you know. What is the research objective for this?
Understand the cause of the incident.
Okay, how do you put it as an objective? That is a research question again. Like I said, a research question asks what you want to know, but objective wants to know what will you do to find it out. So if you know the difference, it is very easy to frame the objective. And this becomes very fundamental. What will you do to find it out? What happened? Able to guess? Sir?
Study the background of this.
Absolutely. You want to study the background, correct? Then? Any other guesses? And I'm telling you, I want the wrong guess. If you give me the right guess, my PPT is waste. Give a try. Because tomorrow when you come here, and then you'll be screening the same thing to your student, the student will sit exactly like the way you're sitting right now, which is dangerous.
Investigate why she went to.
Absolutely. To investigate the reason behind her travel from UAS Raichur to Raichur University. Okay, good try. Anything else? Anything much better? Investigating with the friends. Okay. So you're coming closer. So I'll structurize this as an objective.
That's the hypothetical question, whether she's murdered or not.
Okay, that's a very good. Ma'am is very active today. I think she had a very good breakfast. A round of applause, please, to her, ma'am. Okay, so here comes the chapter 3, formulating the research objective. So if from the main research question, what happened to the student on the night of the incident? If I have to put it in terms of objective to how to find out what happened to her, my first objective would be to reconstruct the sequence of events. That is what the police does, right? They retry to create that once again incident, how it must have happened, using the bits of information that is available. Either it could be through CCTVs or it could be asking the friends, so on and so forth. Second, to identify and examine the available evidence related to the incidents, correct? That is what we are going to do. To examine the involvement of persons associated with the incident. And finally, to determine whether the incident shows any connection with the previous similar incidents. So what do you see in the objectives? At night, this lady fell unconscious. So we want to know what has happened. First says, we want to reconstruct the sequence of events. Second, we want to know what is the available evidences we have to see what happened to that lady. Third, it wants to know how many people or which person was involved in being she unconscious or murdered. And finally, it wants to know, is it independent or is it somebody else who is there in that area who is actually doing something or killing a lady or making them unconscious. So we are checking from the 4 different angles. Is that correct now? Am I making sense? Yes, absolutely. So a research design becomes the blueprint of the investigation. That means which evidence, from where, from whom, over what period, using what method, and how will you analyze it. And if you're able to understand this sequence, whether it is pure science, whether it is social science, you'll be able to frame a very good research question with a doable research objective. Good to go? Getting bored? No? Oh my God, I have a very nice audience today. So now that we know what we want to investigate, how will we investigate? This is the next question. This comes from chapter 4, the research design. Let us test for some basic things. Here comes the two variables. One is what we know is independent variable, another is dependent variable. Any understanding of this? What is independent, what is dependent? If I say, what is the factor we are changing, comparing, or using to explain something? This is independent. But what is the outcome we are actually measuring? This becomes dependent variable. Example, if I have to give, in the social sciences, study time, income, this is very independent. But in pure science, if you see the temperature, the light intensity, we need to measure these things. So they are dependent variables. Experimental versus control. Why do we need this? So an experimental group is the group in which we study the effect of conditions or interventions. That means we have something, okay, existing. We want to know how it can be improved by doing some interventions or some modifications. So when you modify, it becomes experimental. But when you keep it as it is without doing anything, and you want to keep it as a check, that becomes your control. So basically, this usually goes in the botanical sciences, the forest sciences, and the agricultural experiments, where, let's say, for example, a fertilizer check. We want to know a new company has released one variety of fertilizer, and it says that if you put this fertilizer in your agricultural land, the productivity is going to increase by 5 times. This is the company's claim. How should I know? So what I do is, I will grow paddy without adding that fertilizer, and I will grow another similar land, another block, adding that fertilizer. And I will just compare the performance. So one becomes experimental block, another becomes my unchecked, which is a control. How do we make an experiment fair and reliable? This is very important. So where the 3 basic principles of research stands. Number 1, replication. Let us say I want to know how the PhD students of this academic year are going to perform. And in this, I will be knowing one person who has done really very good in MSc. And the invigilators and the faculty members, they come, and suddenly I will raise this person and say, ma'am, this batch is very good. And this boy has done really excellent. And if he has done excellent, everyone is excellent. Will it be fair? Absolutely not, because there might be somebody who is having difficulty in catching up the courses. Here where the replication comes in picture. So you don't just measure once, you measure number of times so that we can reduce the biases. That is replication. Second is randomization. Instead of directly picking one person or one item, which is my favorite, rather I would pick randomly from the group or from my sample. That becomes randomization. And then I will have something as a control, something which is untouched, something which is standard. So these are the 3 basic principles of any research: replication, randomization, local control. Remember this is very important from the point of view of research. And this is where your research design becomes very evident when you follow these 3 basic principles. Then comes the 3 broad types when we conduct a research design. It can be exploratory or formulative, where we are trying to understand the problem and develop the ideas or hypothesis. The second type of work could be descriptive or diagnostic, wherein we want an accurate description or diagnosis of a situation or association, and then we'll be going for a hypothesis testing, which is we have an idea. Now we want to know whether it is true or not. So these are the 3 methods or the broad types of how we design our research. And technically, if I have to reduce this complexity of understanding this, I would say the research could be a qualitative or a quantitative. Okay, quantitative, something we can measure and do an experiment, becomes quantitative because here everything is measurable. While qualitative, a social science experiment, what is the effect of social media on education? What is the income level of people and making them very prosperous with the Viksit Bharat of 2047? You got the idea? So when you check the attitude, the behavior, it becomes qualitative. And how are we going to do this? By questionnaire, by behavior patterns, by focus group discussions, by interviews, so on and so forth. But when you do quantitative, we need to put the science in this. It could be complete randomized design, randomized plot designs, and the multiple statistical tools that we use during the quantitative measurements. Then comes the sampling. Basically, sample is out of 1,000, I pick 5 because I cannot do 1,000. It could be because of resource, it could be because of time constraint, resource constraint, or it could be anything. So sampling is basically a process of selecting a smaller group from a larger population for the study, and the population is the entire. So basically, there are two broad approaches. One is probability sampling, non-probability sampling. Various textbooks give this terminology in various different ways, but I feel the probability and non-probability sounds much inferential compared to other terminologies. So when I say probability sampling, everyone has got a chance of being selected. And when I say non-probability, selection is based on my convenience, my judgment, my other criteria. One example for that matter, if you could want to quote to me for probability and non-probability, what it could be? One example for each from your side. Or let us connect it with that incident. Now that after the preliminary investigation, we have found out the girl is dead. She was not unconscious, she's dead now. And you being investigating officer, I have already given you 10 lakhs, 6 months time. Raichur University, all students, staff, security guards, local people. The sample population is big, and you need to do sampling. You cannot go on keep on asking every individual, every teacher, every security guard, what happened, because everyone will tell one story. Investigation will become complex. The fund that I have provided you will become Kali. Isn't it? So what we are supposed to do is now we have to do sampling. So now give me one example with respect to this case. Yeah.
So you can separate the colors, similar colors was separate.
Absolutely correct. Yes. The faculty is more interactive than my students today. What is wrong with you? You guys have no good sleep, no good breakfast.
Who's close to that?
Okay.
Supposed to be similar information.
Yeah.
Interviewing the person. You are interviewing the person. So we can give the numbers to each member and we can elect every 5 number.
No. With respect to the case now. We are going with respect to the case.
Based on convenience for your technical person.
Yeah. Now, in the case of the women's death, whether you are going to choose the probability sampling or the non-probability sampling. Non-probability. And when you say non-probability, what criteria are you using? That is what the important part was, remembering the case, because you're an investigating officer. We can use absolutely correct snowball technique. Perfect. So we have another
Every sample is referring to another sample.
sample. Absolutely. So you're getting the point. It's just flashing above. It can, yes, absolutely. You can use a mixed approach. So technically, if you want to know whether the criteria, or let us say the incident has keep occurring on the Ergela road, occurrence. Yeah. So that could be one reason where you can use a mixed approach of probability and non-probability. But in the death case of that girl, we can use non-probability. So I guess you guys are able to catch my lecture. Where will our evidence come from? So that means we have decided what we want to know. Now we need is evidence. So usually, whenever we are doing a research, there are two ways that we can collect the evidence. One is primary source, that you go collect all the evidences. One is from the secondary sources. You take reports, you take any magazines, that is already collected. So some examples. From primary, you can collect from questionnaire, you can interview, you can observe, you can do the experiment. And For secondary data, you can check the government records, you can take the reports, you can take published studies, databases, etc. Next topic is data processing and analysis. This is where the problem comes. We as a PhD, or when we are doing a PhD, we have the greed of collecting the data. And we collect as much data as possible. And when we start to feed it in the Excel or SPSS, we get to know half of the data is useless. Half of the data is useless. This is why when you begin a research, always make sure that preliminary 10 to 15, if it is social sciences, 10 to 15 people you have done once interview, try to analyze, put it in the Excel. So you will get to know whether the information that you are collecting is whether relevant or irrelevant. While if you are doing a normal experiment with CRD, RCBD, factorial designs, etc., then you will get to know very easily based on the review of literature. So during the processing, analyzing the data, we have a raw data that is collected. That raw data goes for editing, coding, classification and tabulation, analysis. And when we do all these things, we will get for a meaningful results or findings. Hypothesis. This is very important with respect to what we know, whether it is true or not, we need to test it out. Most of the Indian researchers or the thesis that I have been seeing so far, they lack hypothesis. And they say that the research objectives is sufficient to test whether it is correct or not. And interestingly, if the research funding is going down year by year at the central government level, the biggest reason is you prepare a proposal, you submit it to the government or for any funding agency for that matter, and you give expected results at the end during the proposal. If you have heard, and if you're in your MSc, you must have given the significance of the study or expected results. For that matter. And at the end, whether the result is positive or negative, we are trying our level best to match it with the significance of the study or the expected results you gave during the proposal. That means before doing the work, you already know what is going to be the result. This is where the central government or the secretaries are finding it very tough. And they think the research ethics is going down year by year. That is why the funding is also going down. DS3DBT is not funding as usual. We feel our research proposal is very awesome, but at that level, it is not solving the purpose. This is why having a hypothesis is very important to test whether what you know or what you have done is correct or not. So basically, hypothesis testing is nothing but a process of using the data to decide whether there is enough evidence to support or reject the assumption. So basically, we should not ask, what do I believe? Instead, we are asking, what does the evidence support? This is where our entire result is depicted. So when you are writing your chapter of result and discussion, it is not you are trying to prove your objectives. It is you are either accepting the hypothesis or you are rejecting the hypothesis. And if your thesis is liking this hypothesis, that means your work is still incomplete and your result and discussion is still based on assumption. And then you will start writing, this could be due to, this could or may be due to, instead of directly telling for this cause or for this effect, this was the cause. Got my point? And there are two possibilities for hypothesis testing. When we test an idea, we consider only two possibilities. That is, one is null hypothesis, another is alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis, there is no significant difference or the relationship or the effect. While the alternate hypothesis says there is a significant difference or a relationship or effect. And every proposal that we write for the funding, we says that we need to accept the alternate hypothesis. And in fact, it is nothing wrong that if you say, or the null hypothesis is also correct. That is also a science. So evidence leading to test, and that test is going to lead to the decisions. The significance level. Do you want to take a tea break? Want to have a short break? Okay, so we'll wrap up for 10 minutes. Okay, we'll get fresh and we'll come back to the remaining concepts. Thank you. So We're good to start? Okay, so before I enter into the significance level, I'll increase your curiosity with respect to the case, some developments. Okay, some update on the developments. When she left, before that, when she left the UAS Raichur campus, on the call, she had an argument with her boyfriend. Okay, and they told that we will meet in the evening. So this was the conversation between boyfriend. Manoj had told Akka, let us meet at 6:30. I have some important things to discuss. And when the police was investigating, they also saw the phone calls, and her PhD scholar friend also, she had also called it around 7 o'clock. And when they tried to investigate the matter and started to ask each one of them what time they left, types of phone calls, etc., everyone lied. All the details given by these three people, the boyfriend, the junior, the batchmate, everyone has lied. The timings and the content. Okay. This is the pieces of information I have given to you now. She has reached there to meet somebody. She has reached Ergera Road to meet somebody. Who? Still a suspense. Evidences I have given you. CCTV says she met somebody before getting killed. She met somebody before getting killed. The person's face was not clearly visible. The CCTV shows only the girl falling on the ground after being killed. The other person is not clearly visible in the CCTV. This is the piece of information I have given you. Remember this events. You need to identify the killer. Again, you have to return back 10 lakh rupees if you're not telling me who is the killer, okay? Continuing to it. Significance level. Whenever we have framed a hypothesis to test whether our research questions do we need to accept or reject, we need to have something as a fixed point. And that fixed point, we usually take it as 0.05. That is the 5% of error. This 5% of error, why we take, it could be either because of human biasness, it could be the fault of the machines, or it could be anything. This changes with respect to lab work as well as the field work. In the field, the conditions are not in our hand. Like for example, if I want to see the growth of maybe bajra, jawar, and what is the climate that is posing the effect on these things. Climate is not in my hand. And the chances of error might be more than 5%. That is also possible. But when it comes to lab conditions, when I'm working or when I'm conducting a research in the lab, the chances of error will be quite less because there the conditions are under my control. So this is why if you carefully observe a very good peer-reviewed work, research works, earlier they used to mention as CD, critical difference. CD value 5%, CD value 1%. So where this 5% comes, where this 1% comes, we should know. Now we use P value or the significance value. Some papers use F value also, but P value is more authenticated and it is widely accepted by peer-reviewed journals. So 1% of the significance level we test when the controlled conditions are in my hand. For example, lab, it could be a nursery experiment where I'm able to control the temperature, humidity. And if I do not have the control on temperature, humidity, or any other natural phenomena, then the significance level stands at 5%. And this 5% biasness is permitted in any research for that matter. Now, question comes, sir, in the social sciences, what should be the optimum number that we need to take so that the biasness is less? Technically, so far to what papers I have reviewed in the international journals, I say for MSc level of work, the population size or the raw data that you collect, it should be minimum of 180. Again, when I say 180, I want to now calculate it based on the sample size formula with respect to total number of populations. But considering the Indian conditions, the topography and the villages concerned, 150 to 180 is still acceptable. But if it is a PhD, I would expect the raw data to be collected from still more. The statistical test. Whenever I mention the statistical test, the things that come to our mind is CRD, RBD, ANOVA, chi-square test, regression, correlations. Isn't it? This is the major things. And this is where we break our head the most. What is the appropriate test is decided based on the kind of data that you have. Okay, kind of data that you have, based on that you decide the test. For example, an X experiment was conducted by some person and he has used Y method. And if you want to continue the same method but in different location, is it necessary that you need to employ the same method? Absolutely no. Because the situation, the topography, the climate, everything varies. So based on the raw data that you collect, upon that only you have to take the decision what is the most appropriate statistical test you need to frame. Now, there should be a thumb rule, right, to decide. So what is that thumb rule? Let us say, what test should we use in what conditions? If I have two different groups, I will go for t-test because I need to have a comparison between the two groups. But if there are more than two groups or several groups are present, then I will go for descriptive statistics, that is ANOVA, analysis of variance. If I have two categorical variables related, then I will use chi-square test. If I have two variables connected to each other or influencing upon each other, I will use correlation. And if I can predict one variable from another, I will use regression. So this is the basic thumb rule. In detail, I think the statistical faculty will be taking care. And in case if you need the murder story once again, let me know. I will come with the murder story to explain each of these topics. Clear? So have this in mind. This will become a thumb rule for you to decide based on the raw data that you are collecting. And again, I'm repeating, simply following any peer-reviewed journals, some XYZ method to your raw data is not at all necessary. Check the raw data that you have, see your research question, what objective you have framed, and based on that, you decide what test is most appropriate for your work. I always say the numbers are not the answers. Reason? A statistical result tells us what the data show, but the interpretation tells us what that result means. What that result means. Able to guess what am I trying to tell? Absolutely. I may have some numbers with me, but the way I depict would be different from the way the sir is depicted. I may be all-time positive, like for example, ChatGPT. I think most of you use ChatGPT. And you know the worst part of ChatGPT? It always talks in your favor. Even if you want to ask a negative question, it will say, no. Be positive. And it will only answer what you want to hear. So for those who are still single, use ChatGPT. It's a very good company. But if you're looking for a very good analysis, again, ChatGPT is still a very wrong option to choose. So the data interpretation deals with the result. What did the analysis show to you when you do any of the statistical tests? Next comes the interpretation. What does the result means to you? And finally, the conclusion. What can be reasonably concluded? Do we need to be all-time positive? Not necessary. Do we need to be very negative with respect to whatever we are getting? Not necessary. Do we need to have a mixed approach? It is, again, a subjective judgment. Always remember in your PhD, If it is for an MSc, I am little liberal. But when it comes to PhD, we PhDs are seen with a hope in the society that for some problem we will give some solution. Okay, this is why we get the name as doctor. And my wife, sir, my wife is endocrinologist, and we every now and then we fight with who is the real doctor. Who is the real doctor? And me being a faculty, I have the habit of narrating ki, how did the doctor word arrived, who stole the word. You want to know? A person who had the highest level of education was supposed to be called as doctor in the European colonial times. Then the advocates came, and advocates told ki, you are not the only one who knows everything in this world. We are also one. We are the ones who are interpreting the constitutions of so and so, etc. Then came the physicians. Physicians are those basically MBBS doctors. So they told ki, we save life. It is we who are supposed to be called as doctors. And seeing them today, we know even BDS, Ayurveda, every now and then, everyone calls themselves as doctor. But even the true doctors are the ones who has taken the highest entitlement in the education. And it's we, the PhDs, who has taken the highest step to be called as a real doctors. But the question comes again, when I am going to be called as a doctor, am I giving a solution to the society? And what society should look at me when there is a problem? And remember this, whatever problem or the research question you will be taking, that will decide your entire career for the next 30 years. Because for the students you will be guiding, you will be always guiding them based on your own expertise. So be very, very careful when you are picking your own research topic. I always get offensive. Do not mind, but I always get offensive with the HODs or the research guides. They do not give the students the liberty to pick their topic. So I always say, the students should be given a chance to pick their topic of interest. Let them come, let them discuss. And if it matches with some or the other faculty, they should be given a choice. Okay, go. And you can work with some XYZ faculty's expertise. That is very important because you are not just completing a PhD, you are going to set your own career for the next 30 years. Remember this. Because if your expertise shakes, your respects will lower down very drastically and your students will start judging you. To tell you one example, when you have enrolled yourself as a PhD, I am 100% sure that 90% of you feel that you know more than your own teachers. At least it happens in my college, ma'am. My students, they think they know much better than me. And I'm the most useless person in my university. And then I come up with such stories. And then I ask them questions. And then they shut. And then they listen to me very carefully. And then I remind them, I'm standing here not just by the virtue of some degree. I'm here by my knowledge. I'm here by my expertise. And this is how your students have to see you. When there is a problem, they should run and come to you saying, I have a problem. And if you're not able to solve that problem at that moment of time, the level of respect that the student was seeing starts reducing. That is the reality of Indian PhDs, to tell you. So numbers inform us, interpretation gives us the meaning, while together they lead to sound conclusions. And this is where you write your summary and conclusion chapter of your thesis. And finally, where I started with my title, From Questions to Contribution. This is the debatable question where my students usually ask you, sir, we are from social sciences. What can we contribute? Because pure science people usually say that they work on quantum physics. Some people work on applied chemistry. So they have some inventions or the discoveries to do. While the social sciences, they little feel skeptic. We do a questionnaire survey, we don't get a good data. It might be a biased. I'll tell you, the contribution is not always a discovery. It could be in the form of a new knowledge. Discover something previously unknown. It could be a new evidence, providing the stronger or new evidence about an existing question. New explanation, explain why or how something has happened. It could be a new method, develop or improve a way of studying or measuring something. And finally, a new application, apply existing knowledge in a new context or a problem. So if your science or if your research is able to identify or come out with any one of these five, that means you have contributed to the society. And to tell you, for the social sciences especially, or the social scientist, your research is more meaningful than the pure sciences. So do not think that the social sciences doesn't have space. No. Every policy decision that is taken in this country is based on social science. While the pure science might get the Nobel Prize, the social sciences decide the policy. If today Prime Minister Narendra Modi comes up and says a speech and decides, it is based on some social science research. That is very important. So no science is behind today. Every science has its own relevance. Finding your own niche and the correct space is very important to the system, rather than being rotting in any unwanted places. Clear? Yeah. So here I complete my presentation. So if at all, if anybody has any questions for that matter with respect to research, I have provided my phone number, and those who are very much updated, you can also connect to me with my Instagram ID. It's a Gyansagam24. I'm always available. And if at all, if anybody needs my help in the research, I'm free to be a member of anybody's PhD work also. And together we can design our new works also. So yeah, so any doubts, any confusions, any clarity required from my side, please do let me know. 2 minutes.
We are only concentrating on qualitative research or any other research?
We have done, like I said, we have described in a broad category. We have explorative, we have diagnostic surveys also, and many more. We have total 6 types of broad categories where we can design the research design we can do. If you want the details, I will mail it to you. But technically in India, what we're doing is we are going for either quantitative or qualitative. But basically there are 6 broad ways, which is technically used by foreign countries. In India, we go for very easy kind of research, something which can be completed in a limited span of time and the limited resources. That is the hindrance we have in the Indian research. Where every student comes with a time frame, sir. Parents ಮದುವೆ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ತಾರಂತೆ 2 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಗಿಸ್ಬೇಕು. Boys are like, sir, I have to earn fast. I need a job. Please get my thesis submitted and corrected very fast.
In your PhD time, which research you have followed, sir?
I had a mixed approach, ma'am. I used both quantitative as well as qualitative. And
What's your research?
agroforestry land use dynamics, ma'am. I have combined remote sensing, conservation biology, agroforestry, forestry aspects, and then the home gardens. So it was a Panchvarshika Yojana, but COVID helped me. And having my father as a civil servant, he is a retired civil servant. So I had a little more benefits from the government side. So during COVID, when everyone was locked down, I was the only one who was roaming in throughout Karnataka. UAS Dharwad, ma'am. I have a home at Sirsi, but technically I belong to Delhi. My hometown is Delhi. Yeah. But my education, I have completed BSc, MSc, PhD from UAS Dharwad.
Your father was working in Tamil Nadu.
No, he was secretary to the state of Madhya Pradesh earlier. So that is how he came. He loved this place. We are migrants basically.